everybody. Reporting to you again from the Glamour City, Hollywood.
Before sustainability became a buzzword, you were already doing that because it was in your best interest to make sure that you had a productive farm, correct?
Well, that's right. You know, they use the S word now, and I like to call it repeatable. I say if you're sustainable, for me, means repeatable. It means what we're doing today, we can do next year, we can do in 4 or 5, 6 years from now. What we'll be doing in 10 years from now will be different than what we're doing now, but it'll be better than what we're doing now because we're always looking for better ways. And you're right. With the digester and what we do, and we might do things a little bit different than other farms, but I like to say that farmers were the original environmentalists, we're the original people that worked, and the original recyclers. And I think we were green before greens become groovy. You know, I mean, we everybody wants to be sustainable. Everybody wants to be green. And we look at it kind of like, hey, we've been doing this. We've been caring for the environment. We've been recycling. We've been watching our water usage. And when we watch the weather, it means something to us. It's not going to ruin our golf game. It might ruin our income for the year. So we're really attuned to the environment and working with it and protecting it so that it is sustainable or repeatable for not only us, but our community, our employees, and our family.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today I'm joined by George Crave, president of Crave Brothers Farmstead Cheese.
Yes, I'm George Crave from Crave Brothers Farmstead Cheese in Waterloo, Wisconsin. We're south central Wisconsin, just east of Madison. So we're in a really nice area. It's a highly productive agricultural area. We do have all 4 seasons, summer, fall, winter, and spring. So it's a typical north, central, Midwest type of growing environment, roughly 120 days of growing season. So we're asked many times, why don't you, grow grass and pasture, and I said, well, we only have about 120 days of growing season. So that's one of the first questions we get when we get going. But the Crave Brothers started in Waterloo in 1980, grew up on my dad's farm down in Beloit, right on the Illinois line. He sold the cows in 1974, and believe it or not, there was about 60,000 farms, the little red barns in Wisconsin that were milking cows at that time. And we were able to get started up again in 1978 on a small rented farm, my brother Charlie and myself. And we farmed there for about 2-3 years, rented a farm, bought the cows. We were able to pay off that initial chattel, we call it, cattle and machinery, and paid that off. And then we went and bought a farm in Waterloo in 1980. And you hear on the news right now about the high interest rates and inflation, and we were getting in and just bought the farm right at the forefront of that huge inflation and high interest rates of about 1982. We were paying 16%. So anyone that's worried about high interest rates, don't worry about it until you get to 16%. And you can really start thinking that every dollar you make, 16% of that is going back to the bank or just to pay for the money that you borrowed from the bank. So really difficult, challenging times. You look back in history, they called it the farm crisis, and it was a really big realignment of not only farming, but equity and equity-based borrowing that the bankers did. And we saw that in 2007 with the home loans where way too much money was lent on equity, and that gets a lot of people in trouble whenever inflation or value starts to drop or level off. It gets all your balance sheets backwards. But that's a brief lesson in financing, but nothing works without proper economics for sure. But we moved to Waterloo, and we had 80 cows at that time and made it through the farm crisis. In about 1989, 2 other brothers had joined the business. My brother Tom and brother Mark joined the business. and we knew we had to continue to grow, be more productive, sell more product, and eke out a profit to pay for the family. And it was all family labor at that time, the four brothers, and we eventually hired a couple neighbor kids. But then we built a barn, a modern, more conventional type of barn that we have now. But at the time, it was very modern, 200 cow barn. And a few years later, 400 cows. And make a long story short, today we farm 3,000 acres. We milk 2,000 cows. And 20 years ago, the interesting thing we did is we're looking at other ways to grow the family business without just milking more cows, without just growing more alfalfa and corn. And I call it kind of getting off the commodity treadmill. So we built our own on-farm cheese factory. That's Crave Brothers Farmstead Cheese. And that was just 20 years ago. This month of February of 2002, we built the cheese factory. So we're looking at an anniversary, and we're very proud of what we've done. And right now we make cheese that sells from Miami to Seattle, from San Diego to New England. So it's a very vibrant business. We have 50 employees just in the cheese factory, and we use almost all of our milk from our 2,000 cows. So that brings you up to speed of where we are today.
As I'm listening, there's a lot of profound milestones, both as a family, but also as a business. And you mentioned a little bit around some of the challenges around the finance aspects with equity as well as interest rate climate back in that time period. I wonder, as you look back, I think it's one thing to run a corporate entity that's not family owned, but here it's family owned, plus it's become a large enterprise as well. I wonder, if you look back, what are some of the key decisions that your families or generations have made that I think were critical to the success that has gotten to where you are today?
I think just knowing that we have to continually improve. We can't stand still. I'm not a big believer in that if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't believe in that. But if you're not improving, you're not going to keep up with the competition or the rest of the world, or in our case, really commodity food production, which is our meat and milk. So you have to continue to look for ways to improve. I've used the term that if you don't use ways to improve or look for ways to continue to do better, you're really making a terminal decision. You're always making a business decision, either to stay the same, improve, or whatever the other decision may be. But if you're not looking at ways to improve your business, improve profitability, improve sustainability, repeatability, then you're really making a decision to eventually are operating a terminal business that does have a sunset date in it. What we've done.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what we did is build modern cow housing, implemented cover crops and crop rotation, which we can do very easy with the dairy industry because we grow about 3 or 4 different crops: soybeans, corn, alfalfa, winter wheat, and we can rotate those crops. And for your urban listeners, rotating crops means that maybe we'll grow corn for 2 years in one field. The next year it'll be winter wheat. The next year after the winter wheat, we'll plant alfalfa in the fall. And by the next spring, we have a nice field of alfalfa that'll grow for 3-4 years. And then that will be rotated back into soybeans or back into corn and continue that. And that's a patchwork across all of our 3,000 acres that how it works. And all that feed is harvested to feed our cows. So what comes off the field, feed the cows, make the meat and milk, and the milk goes to make the cheese. And one of the really unique stories that we have is then all of our waste from the farm and the cheese factory ends up going back into two large 750,000 gallon tanks, big fermentation tanks, where the biomass is rapidly decomposed, and a resulting product of that is methane gas. So we're intentionally producing methane gas, creating methane gas that is all harvested and captured and is pipelined through a large 800 horse V12 engine that turns an electromagnetic generator that in turn generates enough electricity to power our farm the cheese factory and about 300 homes in our community. So we're not burning off the waste. We're just burning off the gas, the volatile gases, and the solids and the nutrients through that manure stream and that waste stream end up going back to the fields, recycled back to the fields to be the nutrients to grow our crops for next year. So that's one thing we do. And another the big switch we made, as I say, 20 years ago, was to take a lot of our product off the commodity treadmill, which means the only way you can keep up is just to keep making more and keep making more. And we sell at commodity prices in agriculture: corn, soybeans, cattle, milk. On the Chicago Board of Trade sets the price on all of our goods. And I didn't like that idea of operating for another 20 years like that. So we built our own cheese factory to try to just, I use the term, capture more of the consumer dollar, bring more back to rural America, rural Waterloo for our community. And that's what we did 20 years ago. So that was a huge decision, not a decision by whim, because taking a raw ingredient and making it into a consumable product is definitely a lot of steps involved. One person quoted me years ago saying, I took the middleman out of it. And I said, no, I didn't take the middleman out of it. I just became more of the middleman, and our business became more of the middleman. So that's what we're doing today.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that you covered a lot. And let me just kind of systematically go back a little bit, is that first and foremost, whether we're talking about, manufacturing or modernization of farms, is that because margins are so thin, especially when we're talking about commodities, is that trying to use what you have in terms of assets and trying to get the most yield or output out is going to be the key thing. And of course, when it comes to farm, and you mentioned the modern cow housing as an example, there are certain points in the milestone, the history of your organization, where you've had to make some pretty large CapEx investments. And frankly speaking, not every farm entities are willing to do that. And it's a bit of a risk taking, right? And certainly when it comes to switch over from commodity treadmill to the cheese factory, that's a whole new set of core competencies that your family and your team had to build up as well. So how do you manage and balance out those risk reward, as well as shoring up some of the gaps or knowledge and competencies?
Well, our family has had the advantage where there's four of us, so we kind of divided up responsibility, gave each other responsibilities to perfect their area. Brother Tom was crops and machinery. My brother Charlie did the bookkeeping and a lot of the feeding. Brother Mark helped with the herdsman work as I stepped over the cheese business, where we had time and more specialized. And that's a lot of the problem in family farms or smaller units, is that you can't really specialize. You have to be a jack of all trades, and sometimes you can't get it all done, and you can't really dial in and fine tune some of those different entities in your business. So that was an advantage. And we all went to college. We all have insight into some of the latest technologies, but also one thing, when you go to college and university at Wisconsin, is they always tell you on the last couple of days is your education is not finished. Okay, we all know that. Your education is not finished. We're always a resource. Our land-grant universities are always a resource. And we've used those resources for years, going back to meetings, making phone calls. We've even hosted field trips at our farm. But also in Wisconsin, we have the Center for Dairy Research, which was instrumental in helping me launch the cheese factory and helping us, really fine tune our make procedures and processes. So we've always gone back and looked for resources to help us. We can only learn so much and do so much, but we go out and find the people that can help us take that next step and answer those questions, whether it be financial, operations, through the crops, the cows, or the cheese. So that's how we use the resources that are at our fingertips, really.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And also you mentioned the biomass. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes. But I want to kind of focus on a little bit on this notion of a symbiotic relationship with animals. And, unlike, let's say, a cow ranch that raises cows for meat and churns them every 30, 42 months, there's a different mindset when it comes to a dairy farm, correct? And then, of course, extending that value add to cheese factory. If you could talk about that mindset and how that gets translated into daily execution of the operation.
Right. Well, the cows, the mammals. I always have to explain when we have visitors, and I'll use this term a lot, or this example a lot, because we do have buyer groups come into Wisconsin, come to our facility, and we really use that opportunity to explain what we have. So we have the mammals, and they have to have a baby to produce the milk, and then that baby calf is grown up for almost 2 years before she has her baby to start her lactation and producing milk. So it's a lifespan of continuous, birth through growing, through production. And these cows will be in productive life for 3 or 4 or 5, 6 lactations, which means they 7, 8 years old. Some people would say that doesn't sound very old, but really that's like dogs or pets or cats or anything. Really, they have a different lifespan than humans do. That's just the way they're made. So over that lifetime, they continue to have a baby, come back into lactation, and we work with them. We work with them every day. We milk our cows 3 times a day, so they are handled all the time. We feed them as their babies and grow them up through their teenage years, if you will, their adolescence. And we work with them. We identify them. They are one point of interest might be that we genetically test them. We look at their genetic potential through their DNA, and this is all new science. This is continuous improvement. And we determine which ones are identified as being potentially the most profitable, the most productive. And those are bred to be the cows of the future. And the ones that are not going to be as productive, we breed those to Angus, and that their calves enter the beef supply. So we're only propagating our very best cattle. And again, I use the term continuous improvement and efficiencies, where those cows give us more for less. Just like a car that gets more miles per gallon, we're creating cows that give us more milk per pound of feed and everything that we do with her, and to make her more productive and efficient. So we're always doing that with our crops and our cows, and I find it fascinating. I'm a cow guy. I could talk about cows all day, and just happened to get in the cheese business 20 years ago. But this is what we've done since the beginning of time. And the lords of the olden days would develop their different breeds of cattle depending on where they were in the mountains or the valleys. And we're continuing that tradition even up to 2022 to continue to improve our cattle to be better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah. So as I'm listening, I think what's fundamental is this notion that because the cows are perceived as this long-term productive asset, there is this intrinsic desire or motivation to really care for them, to take care of them, and to make sure that they're producing the most amount of milk and high quality milk. And this also goes back to the crop rotation that you talked about in terms of the corn, the alfalfa, the winter wheat, making sure that food source, nutrients, water, and DNA, all of it's really, I go back to the symbiotic relationship. Is this notion of protection and preservation and sustainability. Before sustainability became a buzzword, you were already doing that because it was in your best interest to make sure that you had a productive farm, correct?
Well, that's right. You know, they use the S word now, and I like to call it repeatable. I say if you're sustainable, for me, means repeatable. It means what we're doing today, we can do next year, we can do in 4 or 5, 6 years from now. What we'll be doing in 10 years from now will be different than what we're doing now, but it'll be better than what we're doing now because we're always looking for better ways. And you're right. With the digester and what we do, and we might do things a little bit different than other farms, but I like to say that farmers were the original environmentalists, we're the original people that worked, and the original recyclers. And I think we were green before greens become groovy. You know, I mean, we everybody wants to be sustainable. Everybody wants to be green. And we look at it kind of like, hey, we've been doing this. We've been caring for the environment. We've been recycling. We've been watching our water usage. And when we watch the weather, it means something to us. It's not going to ruin our golf game. It might ruin our income for the year. So we're really attuned to the environment and working with it and protecting it so that it is sustainable or repeatable for not only us, but our community, our employees, and our family.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think another term that comes to mind is this notion of circular economy or circular environment, because of the fact that not only the food production and of course the final product being milk and cheese, but even the waste, right? That was a 7,000 fermentation biomass that goes through that process where the bacteria is working as magic, and then out comes the methane gas and CO2. That's so fascinating because you're taking essentially waste that would have been potentially even harmful to the environment, and you've actually harvested for the purposes of energy, turning it back into the electric generator to create electricity for the factory. And I think you mentioned 12 homes in the community, which in a way kind of makes you a power plant.
Right. Well, it's really about 300 homes, depending on, however you measure home usage, but it's a big generator. And the farm, summertime, we use a lot of fans to cool the cows, cooling the milk, running the equipment, running, the whatever we have in the shop. And then the cheese factory with the pumps, the pasteurizer, everything we have running the vats and the refrigeration, the cheese factory, use a lot of energy on the summertime particularly. But so this generator is running all the time. And then some of the solids we take out of the waste stream also after they come out of the fermentation, it's further processed and dried. The little fibers that came through the whole process, that's recycled back under the cows for bedding. So we're really trying to do a lot of that. I want to make a point though that this is a big machine. You look at it and there's underground piping all through our farm, all through underneath our buildings, and pumps and agitators and valves and everything. And it's a big machine. It's quite an investment. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone should do it. Run this type of it. We have one or two employees, good people that take care of it. My nephew's in charge of making sure it all runs properly. And so it's a big machine. It's really a separate enterprise in our business that we. Yeah,
it's interesting because there are actually private equity and real, very well backed private equity and entities that are going after waste, biomass, but also waste that households produce as well. So this notion of expertise around the biomass power plant becomes almost like a blueprint. To your point, it's another business, and I wonder at some point you could consider not only sharing the best practices, but the capability to other places, other farms, and so forth throughout the country.
Yes, we aren't the first ones to build it. If you go to northern Italy, to our surprise, there's a lot of they even grow the crops to put right into the digesters because they don't have the natural resources. They don't have the natural gas. They don't have the coal and that we come accustomed to here for their energy usage. And so they rely on the digesters for local energy. It's really local because you lose a lot of the generating product through line loss through the transmission line. So if you can produce it locally, you're using so much more of what you're producing, generating. But also there's other farms. There's about 17, 18 in Wisconsin. They're building a big plant up in the Green Bay area where there's large dairies that they're building a big generating plant up there. There's more being built in Iowa and Michigan. So it's becoming more popular, more accessible, and we're figuring out the technology, and hopefully, as I say, it's a big investment. It's not for everyone, but we're very proud of what we do, and we even use it in our marketing. We call it Clean Fuel Crave, or produced with renewable energy, the logo that we put on our packages. So it's something we want to make sure that we're telling the consumer. The consumer wants to know how their food's being produced, and we're more than happy to tell them. And we put that on our little logo on the package. It's really a cow with a green leaf for a tail, and it's produced with renewable energy. So it's something. And you can go to cravecheese.com and look up our story, and we have a lot of videos on there that will show you what we do and a lot of the little things that we do in our business.
Because we are a climate change show, we do have to ask a question around CO2. Of course, undoubtedly, this full end-to-end process is going to produce some carbon dioxide. So are there scrubbers? Are there things that's been done to capture or sequester some of this CO2 output?
Yeah, we have scrubbers on that goes in and out of the engine to clean up the gas. I think that there's more technology that needs to come along to use these types of equipment. I think there's always, even with windmills or solar power, there's always byproducts of that manufacturing that's to really say net zero is going to be difficult. But I believe as we just continue to try and continue to look at new ways and really dissect this, we'll come up with better ways. I think we're really at the forefront of really looking at getting away from the non-renewable fossil fuels and what can we do with our environment or our natural producing waste, human waste, the garbage that we have in the country. What can we really do with all that to really mitigate our footprint here, not only in the country. We go to the country and we go to the big cities for some of our marketing meetings. And for me, I scratch my head thinking, wow, what a footprint these metropolitan areas have, and how we're going to fix that.
Absolutely. And I wonder, because going back to this philosophy of farmstead, sustainable farming, and how it's so embedded in the kind of the history of agriculture to a great extent, is this in your industry? Is there a consolidation? Is there M&A? Are you seeing continued growth of more larger corporate entities? And with those corporate entities, sure, they bring in best practices and machineries and know-how, but at the same time, are they foregoing certain sustainable practices because they want to eke out higher margins?
I don't think so. I can't speak for all other dairies. It's such a big country and there's so many different production practices, Scott, when you look at the Vermont and the Maine dairies in New York, and then you get out to the high plains and the way they farm out in the bigger areas of the West, quite diverse, very different on how we produce. But everyone, just for economics, you have to operate efficiently. You have to pay attention to your cattle and the land. And right now on the Board of Trade, the price of corn, the price of soybeans is very high, and there's no room for waste. There's no room for not running efficiently and using all of our resources to the best we can, because it's just waste. Waste never pays. Absolutely.
And there's certainly in the equity as well as the debt market that you described, any one of those conditions plus the weather, there's just a lot of things that could hamper those already difficult conditions. I want to talk a little bit more kind of forward-looking, and some of these things you may like, you may not like, I don't know. But I'm curious to know about your opinion about these kind of newfangled companies that are producing alternative meats or clean meats, as well as plant-based and biotech engineered milk, including cheese and even human milk. Any thoughts?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have thoughts on that. But, just on the news this morning, I see that the artificial meat, the lab grown meat or whatever, however they produce it, sales are down. It was popular. They promoted it. There's a lot of capital, outside money behind growing those markets. And people have tried it. And from what I can see and what they announced on the news this morning, the consumers aren't too thrilled with it. They're not accepting it. So, as far as the milk, and there's only one milk, and that comes from mammals. Mammals produce milk. The other companies, they have to call it what it is. And there's nothing that can provide more nutrition, more dense nutrition for humans and mammals than milk. The calcium, the riboflavin, all the vitamins and micronutrients that you find in milk can't be replicated by smashing beans and nuts and homogenizing them and to make them into something white, pourable white stuff. And you look at the labels, go look at the labels. You want clean label, the customers want clean label, pick up a gallon of milk and it's grade A milk, fortified with vitamin D. Pick up a label of the alternatives and it reads like a science class. So what do you want? Clean labels, you want natural. You have natural, nutritious, delicious dairy. So it checks all the boxes for what people really are looking for in their nutrition and their energy.
All right, so I have a final, very important question, which is, what is your favorite recipe that you like to use for your cheese?
That, depending on the season, we all eat seasonally. Production's always seasonal. In the wintertime, we love our mascarpone mushroom soup. We make mascarpone cream cheese, and we have a terrific soup recipe that has the mascarpone and mushrooms and a little bit of port wine and fresh cracked pepper on top of that on a chilly day. It's wonderful. Summertime, the caprese salads with our pralinis, sliced tomatoes with the medallions and balsamic vinegar, fresh cracked pepper, and it's really good. So really, I prefer one in the wintertime and the caprese salads in the summertime. And according to our markets and our make, our consumers do also. Fresh mozzarella is very popular in the summertime. It's much more year-round than it was 20 years ago, but it's very popular in the summertime as lighter eating. And in the wintertime, we want something more robust, something that really fortifies our bodies to keep us warm and keep us going. And the mascarpone soup is really great for that.
Amazing, amazing. Well, having grown up in a farm for a little bit when I was young, is that some of the hardest working, and of course, in terms of ethics and values, just unrivaled, are farmers. And of course, that extends to dairy farmers as well. Just really appreciate the work that you and your family have done to provide nutrition and supply domestically for Americans, and the work that you guys are doing with cheese. So again, appreciate very much your perspective as well as the history of the farm. I have been joined by George Crave, president of Crave Brothers Farmstead Cheese. Thank you for joining today.
You're welcome, Scott.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.